Truth is a weak currency in a world that trades in illusion. There's a brutal truth you were never told in school, and it's this: liars often win not because they're smarter, but because they understand something most people refuse to accept. Niccolo Machiavelli, the most misunderstood political philosopher in history, saw it with cold clarity. He didn't celebrate deception. He observed it. And what he saw wasn't a moral failure, it was a strategic reality. In a world where perception is more powerful than reality, the liar doesn't need to be right. They just need to be believable. And once you understand that, you start to see the world and yourself differently.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Let's start with the uncomfortable question: when was the last time you were rewarded for telling the truth? Not just not punished, but actually rewarded. In most environments, school, work, even relationships, truth is tolerated, but only when it's convenient. The moment truth challenges comfort, it becomes a threat. And the liar? The liar thrives in that gap. They say what others want to hear. They craft images instead of identities. They build trust not with honesty, but with strategy. And the mass is hungry for comfort, not clarity by it. Why? Because most people don't want truth. They want certainty. And liars, paradoxically, are often more confident than the truth tellers. Machiavelli captured this contradiction in The Prince, where he wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." That line isn't just about politics. It's about life. We live in a world where appearances dominate substance, where the performance of virtue often replaces the practice of virtue, where the curated self, the social media persona, the polished resume, the charming smile gets more attention than the raw, unfiltered reality. And here's the painful part: the liar understands this. The liar plays the game. The liar doesn't care about truth. The liar cares about utility. And in a world ruled by image, that utility often wins. So what does this mean for the rest of us? Are we doomed if we cling to truth? Are we fools for choosing integrity over influence? Machiavelli wouldn't say yes, but he would say this: if you want to live by truth, you better understand how liars operate. Because if you don't, you'll keep being surprised when they win. You'll keep getting blindsided by manipulation. You'll keep thinking the world is fair when in fact the world is strategic. This isn't about becoming a liar. It's about seeing clearly. Because once you see the game, you're no longer a pawn. You become a player not of deception, but of awareness. Let's go deeper. Why do liars win so often? It comes down to one simple insight: truth has limits, lies do not. A truth teller is bound by reality. They have to wrestle with nuance, uncertainty, complexity. But a liar is free. They can craft a narrative that's simple, seductive, emotionally satisfying. And in a world overloaded with noise, simplicity cuts through. The liar says, "I can fix it." The liar says, "You're right." The liar says, "It's not your fault." And people burnt out, overwhelmed, disoriented cling to that false certainty like a drowning man clings to driftwood. It doesn't matter if it's true. It matters that it feels true. This is what Machiavelli saw centuries before modern psychology confirmed it. People respond more to perception than to fact. And this isn't just about politics or power. It's about everyday life. The charming coworker who rises through the ranks, not because they're competent, but because they know how to signal competence. The influencer who sells a lifestyle they don't actually live. The friend who always tells you what you want to hear. These people win not because they're honest, but because they understand the psychology of belief. And the tragedy is, they're often rewarded more than those who speak uncomfortable truths. The real question is, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? That question haunts every truth seeker, because being right doesn't always change the world. Being right doesn't always protect you. Being right doesn't always win, and that's hard to accept. But Machiavelli didn't flinch from this reality. He taught us that if you want to survive, if you want to lead, influence, protect your values, you must understand the rules of the world as it is, not as you wish it were. And liars win, not because the world is broken, but because the world rewards belief more than accuracy. So what do we do with this? Do we become cynical? Do we give up on truth entirely? No. That would be surrender. The solution isn't to become a liar, it's to become wiser than one. To understand the game without selling your soul to it. To study illusion, not to use it selfishly, but to defend yourself and to elevate truth in a way that actually lands. Because the truth, when wielded with skill, can cut deeper than any lie. But it must be shaped. It must be strategic. It must meet people where they are, not where you think they should be. That's the pivot. That's the philosophical key. Truth without strategy is like a sword with no handle, it cuts the one who wields it. But truth with strategy, that's power. That's how you change minds. That's how you build trust that lasts. That's how you win, not by becoming a liar, but by refusing to be naive. So ask yourself, have I mistaken blunt honesty for wisdom? Have I failed to speak truth in a way that can actually be heard? Because if you want to live by truth, you must also live by clarity. And clarity requires effort. It requires art. It requires you to be as skilled as the liar, but twice as grounded. The lie is a weapon, but truth is a sword, if you learn to wield it. Let's begin with a brutal thought. A lie can travel faster than the truth, not because it's more powerful, but because it's lighter. It doesn't carry the weight of complexity, of contradiction, of nuance. It's aerodynamic. And in a world that prizes speed over substance, lies get there first. But here's what most people miss. Just because lies win the sprint doesn't mean they win the marathon. Truth is heavier, yes. But if you learn to wield it with precision, it becomes something far more dangerous than a lie. It becomes a sword. And like any weapon, it only becomes powerful in the hands of someone who is trained with it. Someone who doesn't just possess truth, but knows how to use it. This is what separates the naive truth teller from the strategic philosopher. The naive truth teller thinks that simply having the truth is enough. They throw it around like a blunt object, hoping it will wake people up. But people don't wake up when they're attacked, they defend. They shut down. They resist. That's why Machiavelli warned rulers to be as cunning as a fox and as strong as a lion. Because force alone isn't enough. And honesty alone isn't enough. You need both force and finesse. You need to know when to speak truth and when to frame it. Not to manipulate, but to communicate. Let's be honest with ourselves. How often have we told the truth in a way that made it impossible to hear? How often have we confused bluntness with courage, thinking that saying it how it is makes us strong when in reality, it just makes us ineffective? Machiavelli wasn't immoral, he was pragmatic. He knew that if you want people to see the truth, you must first understand what their eyes are capable of seeing. Because if you drop a spotlight on someone who's lived in the dark, they don't thank you, they run. They cover their eyes. And they label you the enemy. So what do? We learn to guide people toward truth, not with force, but with intelligent clarity. This is where the sword comes in. A sword isn't just sharp, it's deliberate. Every movement is calculated. Every strike is timed. You don't flail a sword. You wield it. And the same applies to truth. If you want it to cut through illusion, you must sharpen it not just with facts, but with understanding. You must learn the psychology of belief, the emotional architecture of persuasion, the rhythm of timing. You must become a student of human nature, not to control others, but to reach them. Because the truth doesn't matter if it can't be heard. And it won't be heard if you don't know how to say it. Let's pause and ask a deeper question. Why do liars often sound more convincing than truth tellers? The answer is disturbing, because they understand emotion. They speak to desire, fear, hope, identity. While truth tellers drown in data, liars weave narratives. And humans don't follow data, they follow stories. That's not a flaw. That's our nature. And if you ignore that nature, you will lose again and again. Machiavelli saw this clearly. He knew that a ruler who tells the truth without understanding the emotions of the people is like a doctor who prescribes medicine without asking about symptoms. You might be right, but you'll still kill the patient. So what does it mean to speak truth effectively? It means learning to tell stories that reveal reality, not distort it. It means learning to use metaphor, example, and contrast, not just logic. It means learning to listen deeply so you can speak to what actually matters. Because until people feel understood, they won't open up to understanding. And this is the paradox. To reveal the truth, you must first validate the illusion. You must enter someone's world before you can invite them into yours. That's not manipulation. That's compassion with teeth. But most people don't want to do this work. Why? Because it's slow. It's hard. It requires humility. It requires you to admit that being right isn't enough. That changing minds isn't about domination, it's about alignment. And that's the real art, aligning your truth with their humanity. Not bending the truth to fit their comfort, but shaping your expression of truth to meet their readiness. And this is where the liar fails, because while they may win quickly, they cannot sustain trust. Their weapon is illusion, but your sword is substance. And once someone sees the truth for themselves, they never unsee it. Now let's talk power, because this is where everything shifts. Most people think power comes from control, but real power comes from clarity. The liar controls through confusion, but the truth teller, once properly trained, leads through vision, and vision, when expressed clearly, outlasts lies. It doesn't just win arguments, it builds legacies. This is why the greatest leaders in history weren't always the most dominant, they were the most resonant. They spoke truths that echoed in the human soul, and they did it not by preaching, but by embodying the truth. They didn't just say it, they lived it. And that's where we return to you. If you want to live by truth in a world that rewards lies, then you must become more than a speaker. You must become a symbol. Your life must be the proof. Your actions must carry the weight of your words. Because the most powerful kind of truth isn't spoken, it's demonstrated. And when people see that, even the lies begin to crumble. Not all at once, not loudly, but gradually, like shadows retreating from the rising sun. That's the slow revolution of the authentic life. It doesn't make headlines, but it makes history. The final war, why the truth will always outlive the lie, but only if you survive first. Let's not make the mistake of believing this is a fair fight. It's not. The liar has the advantage at the beginning: speed, simplicity, emotional leverage. The truth teller starts behind, burdened by nuance, resistance, disbelief. And in the early rounds, the liar often wins. But Machiavelli, cold and sharp as a blade, knew something even more terrifying. Truth only wins in the end if the truth teller survives long enough to speak it again. This is the final war. And it's not fought in speeches or debates. It's fought in your life, in your endurance, in your willingness to keep standing when the world rewards illusion. Because here's the paradox: truth is immortal, but truth tellers are not. So the question becomes, can you outlast the lie? Not just intellectually, but emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, because that's what it takes. The final victory isn't just about being right, it's about remaining whole in a world that tries to break you for it. Here's the thing no one tells you: the liar doesn't outwit you, they outlast you. They're willing to repeat the same falsehood 1,000 times until it becomes familiar. And because most people are tired, distracted, and overwhelmed, they begin to accept what's familiar, not what's true. So what do? You stop fighting on the liar's terms. You don't match energy. You don't stoop. You anchor. You stabilize. You become the one thing the liar cannot replicate: consistency rooted in reality. You say what's true, and you live it every single day, not because it's popular, but because it's real. This is how truth survives, not through shouting, but through presence, not through aggression, but through integrity. You become a lighthouse in the storm, a fixed point in a sea of chaos. And people will hate you for it at first. They'll mock you, dismiss you, call you naive, idealistic, rigid, outdated. But time has a strange way of revealing everything. And when the lie collapses, when the illusion cracks, people will turn, not to the loudest voice, but to the clearest one. And that voice must be ready, calm, grounded, alive. That's why you must endure. Because if you fall too soon, there will be no one left to speak the truth when it's finally needed. Let's go deeper. The reason most truth tellers don't survive isn't because they lack courage. It's because they lack strategy. They believe that truth alone will protect them. But truth without protection is exposure. It's a spotlight in a sniper field. That's why Machiavelli was so feared, because he understood power not as brute force, but as calculated exposure. He didn't say be evil. He said, if you are good, be good wisely. Meaning, protect your truth, guard your mind, understand the battlefield before you charge. Because the lie doesn't just attack you, it wears you down. It isolates you. It makes you doubt yourself. And if you don't have a strategy, it wins not with violence, but with erosion. So ask yourself, what is your strategy for surviving as a truth teller? Do you have a philosophy strong enough to endure loneliness? Do you have a community or even just one person who reminds you that you're not crazy for seeing clearly? Do you have the discipline to stay focused when distraction is easier? These are not academic questions. They are survival tools. Because without them, truth becomes a burden too heavy to carry. But with them, it becomes a force of nature. Quiet, patient, unstoppable. And here's the most important part. You don't need to convince everyone. That's the lie the ego tells you, that if people don't agree, you've failed. But truth doesn't need to be universal to be eternal. You don't need to save the world. You just need to light your corner of it. And if enough people do that, if enough lighthouses refuse to go dark, then even the thickest fog of lies begins to thin. Not overnight, not dramatically, but inevitably. Because the universe bends toward reality, not illusion. And if you stand with reality long enough, it will stand with you. Let's bring this home. You live in a time when lies dominate headlines, where charisma often beats content, where fast wins are mistaken for wisdom. But beneath all the noise, a deeper rhythm beats a quiet, slow, ancient rhythm, the rhythm of truth. And it's not trendy. It's not loud, but it's real. And unlike lies, it doesn't need to be remembered, it remembers itself. That's why the greatest truths in history still echo today, while most lies are forgotten the moment power shifts. Machiavelli didn't worship deception. He warned us, if you ignore the way the world works, it will destroy you even if you're right. So what do? We stop being naive. We stop thinking that being good is enough. We become good and wise, honest and strategic, clear and courageous. We become lighthouses with armor, or warriors with soul. And we walk into the world not to dominate, but to illuminate. Because there are people silent, watching who want to believe in something real again. And when they see your clarity, your endurance, your refusal to bow to the easy lie, they will remember, truth is not dead. It just took a long breath, and now it's waking up. So I leave you with this question: will you be the one who speaks the truth when it's most dangerous? Will you be the one who stands when everyone else sits? Will you be the one who survives not just to prove you were right, but to show that truth can still live in a world that rewards the mask? Because if you are, then you're not just a truth teller. You're part of something much deeper. You're part of the most ancient rebellion. The rebellion of reality itself against the empire of illusion. And that rebellion? It always begins with one voice. Maybe yours.